Hello and welcome to Black Music Footprints, a jazz experience. My name is Mondre Moffitt and I am your host. On Black Music Footprints, the overarching idea is to look at and celebrate the musical giants that illuminate our pathway to some new expression. And so right here on Black Music Footprints, we are indeed delighted that you're here. And on today's show, I have in the studio my guest, prolific arranger, prolific composer, and also producer. We have Mr. TITUS Robertson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I've been listening to your CD or your EP entitled Quarantine Thoughts and Conversations. And so I'm just kind of curious what was in your head. This is some music for those of us who are going through some quarantine blues, I suspect. And so one of the pieces you have, JJ and L Blues. Let's hear a little bit of that. Just simply, but right from the jump, that's like jazz, gospel, shuffle, urban blues, all mixed in one to come up with your sound. It's kind of like you inventing almost a new genre when I was listening to this particular blues and thinking about the structure. Where does this come from?
So JJ and L Blues. Let me just start with the with catching you up on speed on the EP. So it started last year during the pandemic, and I had to use music as my escape from being stuck in the house and quarantined at home with seemingly nothing to do. And so I went from extremes of cooking, cleaning, rearranging my crib, and finally, I had an old vintage piano in my garage, and I just went out in the garage, and I would go out there and play early in the mornings, late at night. And so eventually I said, you know what, I'm coming up with these cool ideas, and let me just take my phone and record a few of them. And so one thing led to another. I came up with these ideas, probably about 8 or 9 songs. And I just ended up taking my computer outside and some studio equipment into my garage, and I set up shop out there for a couple of months. And I arranged and edited and got the music sitting how I wanted to sit, and then I just started sending it out to my friends in various cities to record their parts to. And so I titled it Quarantine Thoughts and Conversations because it was unique, because at this point, with everybody being stuck in the house during the pandemic and just at home, it kept you away from actually being into rehearsals with musicians, jam sessions, studio sessions. So we had to kind of have these share these ideas and these thoughts through the internet and sending each other files and stuff. So JJ and L Blues was one of the songs that came about. I have an inspiration from my uncle who was passed away a couple of years ago, and his name was Lavelle. My grandfather's name was Joe, and the guitar player that we grew up with in our church in Chicago his name was Johnny. So there's influences from Joe Lacey, Johnny Harris, and then my uncle Lavelle. So I titled it JJ and L, all of their initials, Joe, Johnny, and Lavelle, JJ and L Blues. And this song has influenced my uncle, gospel player, songwriter, and he played piano and organ. So there are certain things that I do musically that I envisioned that my uncle would have played. My grandfather, of course, he was a sax player, and the sax player that I got on there, those are things that I feel like my grandfather would play. So that's how that song was birthed, and so I named it JJ&L Blues.
Very personal statement. And so, talk a little bit about your influences. You mentioned Chicago. Where you're from. Who are some of your earlier influences? Now, before you respond to that question, I first met you at St. Stephen Baptist Church, and you came up and played piano on a piece during a Christmas, program, Christmas holiday season. And you were so phenomenal the way you came in, orchestrated and voiced everything. I was like, who is this guy? I said, hey, I need to be able to contact you. So I just assumed that you were just a gospel player. But give me a little bit about what's your story?
So I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and I had always had an attachment, and I was always intrigued with the sound of an organ. And so I started off as a drummer. I started off playing drums, but my ear always gravitated towards listening to people play the organ, watching them play the pedals, looking at them pull the stops, and change it and make all these different sounds out of an organ. So my influence obviously is church and gospel, but I was always intrigued with the sound of jazz and blues. And so, my uncle Lavelle was probably one of my first inspirations, who I always listened to because we was forced to go to church with him every Sunday. And he played at probably about 5 or 6 different churches in Chicago. So
wow.
We would go from service to service. We would start early in the morning, and we would go all the way until late in the evening. And so he was, one of my biggest influence because I got to hear a lot of, traditional gospel, but also contemporary gospel at that time. Then I was kind of connected and introduced to jazz fusion. And the Yellow Jackets became one of my favorite bands, along with Dave Weckl and the Brecker Brothers, Chick Corea. So I started really listening to a lot of this stuff before I was even, had a vocabulary to try to figure out some of the stuff that was being played. So that's pretty much, my inspiration, and where I kind of pull from is, the Yellow Jackets, again, Dave Weckl, and I like big band.
Wow. I
like
can hear
band.
that
Yeah.
in this recording. And actually, a drummer for the Yellow Jackets, William Kennedy, he and I had a band together before the Yellow Jackets.
Wow.
In Oakland, California.
Wow.
His brother played with Larry Graham, I think. Yes. Okay. Hersch, what's his name? His brother's name was a bassist. But William Kennedy, still with the Yellow Jackets today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and so when did you move from, you were a drummer, and so you started playing keyboards?
So that's what's happened. Like, and it's crazy because when I started off playing drums, but in middle school I actually played trombone. Played in the school band, and I was a trombone player. I played trombone probably until I was a sophomore in high school, and along with still playing drums. I didn't make the switch over to keys until I was probably about 15 years old. And I used to cut class at PRP and go sneak to the choir room and play the piano while I was cutting somebody else's class. I'd always get found at the piano. And so I made my transition about when I was about 15 years old and switched over to keys.
Let me check out this Club Quarantine. Yeah. Yes. 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 So I can hear all these different influences in your music, um, from this club quarantine, and then the J and L blues. Um, you have this in the morning, and that's a piece that I performed before.
Ain't no need in worrying what the night is gonna bring. It'll be all over in the morning. Ain't no need to worry what the night is gonna bring.
I like the way on this EP, as you develop in this record, the songs is always it's so related. It's to making a really a great album. The albums like Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, or Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, or Stevie Wonder's, In the Key of Life. But I'm really excited about, you adding and keep developing on this particular track. We're gonna take a short pause. When we come back, I want to talk to you about, how did you get to Louisville, and some of your musical associations when we return here on SSC Live TV. This is Black Music Footprints. My name is Mondre Moffitt. We'll be right back.
Troubles come, but they do pass. Heartache and hurts, but they don't last. Always, always. Sometimes we feel pain. There are things that we can't change. You gotta
Did you know that the word alma mater comes from the Latin meaning nurturing mother? One of our primary objectives at Simmons College of Kentucky is to nurture late bloomers. So it doesn't matter if you struggle through high school just to graduate, or even if you earn your GED. We don't look at a student's past, we look at their potential. Simmons College of Kentucky, creating the next generation of thinkers.
Yes, we welcome back to Black Music Footprints. We have Titus Robertson in the studio, and one of the things I'm really curious about is your transition to Louisville. And we know that we have a Louisville sound that's been established, but your production and your knowledge about production, how did you acquire that? How did you get to Louisville? And who are some of your influences along those lines?
Got it. So we moved here from Chicago when I was a kid. I was probably 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I spent most of my life here in Louisville. We went back every summer, though, and stayed the entire summer in Chicago. So it's like a portion of the year I'm in Chicago. The rest of the time I'm in Louisville. So I had influences, musical influences in Chicago. So the church organist that we had at our church was Mark Hall. Of course, I had my Uncle LaBelle. Then there was a guy, Daniel Hardy. And Daniel Hardy was the person that actually introduced me to jazz and jazz fusion. But we made that transition to, I learned how to actually play music in Louisville with the help of my inspirations in Chicago and influences in Chicago. So as it relates to production, during my time learning and trying to get an understanding for music, I'd say maybe around when I was 16, I got my first opportunity to actually produce and arrange for an album. And the church here was called Greater Salem. And between Greater Salem and Michael Young, those were my first two opportunities to kind of get my feet wet as an arranger and a producer. and a band director. So, um, uh, and actually, I'd have to say, really, Michael Young was the very first. And then from there, it went to Greater Salem. But in those two roles, I started understanding what I needed to do as a band director, as an arranger, and as a producer. And I was really kind of teaching myself this whole production thing, understanding how to use keyboards, how to program them, understanding how to arrange things so that everybody in the band can actually participate and it be musically something that they were competent and capable of playing, and not something that was just completely over their head. So
Yeah.
I got a chance to get that experience learning how to arrange for all music levels. So that's pretty much where it started in terms of, production for me. And then from there on, as I got to go into different studios, you sit and you watch and you go through, the production process where you ask questions and you learn and you pick up, nuggets from everybody that you work with. And then, eventually I start getting my own equipment. And from there, the rest is history, So.
Yeah, you stand on the shoulders of those great musicians during the great migration to Chicago, the New Orleans musicians, Mahalia Jackson, then Thomas Dorsey showed turns up there, and Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey and Louis Armstrong and King Oliver at Pilgrim Baptist Church. And Chicago, man, is rich. And you had that bombshell of gospel, blues, and jazz, Chicago-style jazz, emerging in the great city of Chicago, standing on the footsteps of giants. I guess you inherit a lot of that diversity and integrated that with a city like Louisville, coming here. And you arrive at a place where you've created a voice of your own, and we can certainly hear it in this particular EP that I'm looking forward to. You have to get this to my audience out, this particular CD. So I understand that you've worked and produced with a lot of names in the business that people might recognize, and I don't know how that came about. I know that maybe Donnie McKirkland and some of the others you've had some affiliation with over the years in the gospel realm. And so who are maybe some of the names that you work with where you feel that you have gained the most experience from?
One of the very first two artists that I ever worked with outside of Louisville was Rodney Bryant and the Christian Community Mass Choir from Indianapolis, Indiana, and a lady who is no longer here, Lucretia Campbell. Those are two of my first opportunities of getting to actually work with a recording artist outside of the city. Then it was a lady named Mimi Red, and she was the lady who sang the lead vocal on the old school traditional gospel song "Order My Steps," and she was the lead singer on that record. Very popular.
The original recording.
The original recording. So I got a chance to work with her when I was probably about 16, and from there, when I was 18 years old, I got my first opportunity to go on my first tour, and I went to Spain for about 4 weeks with the Georgia Mass Choir. And the Georgia Mass Choir is the choir that did the movie The Preacher's Wife. And so they were featured there. And so got my first, touring overseas experience with the Georgia Mass Choir. From there, it went on to a guy named Troy Sneed, he actually passed away last year during COVID. But he gave me the opportunity with the Georgia Mass Choir. From there, I connected with one of the musicians who was a keyboard player with Donnie McKirkland. He was actually the organist, and he got me to sub for him a few times. And after that, I kind of became the permanent person in his place because he started doing other things and traveling with other people. Let's see. Then it went on to Hezekiah Walker, traveled and toured and played with him, played on his record, Every Praise.
Okay.
Kurt Carr singers. Those James Fortune and Fire. Those were pretty much some of the regular gigs that I did on a regular basis In addition, with CC Winans, I was a sub musician with CC for an extended period of time. Let's see who else. I've been fortunate and blessed to be a sub musician with Patti LaBelle, and this started back in 2016. So, and then also Brian McKnight. I can sit here.
Wow.
Some of these people I probably won't even remember. But
so what happens is you start in one place, and then apparently you do a great job, and then you keep being referred and you keep moving.
And you get connected. You know, you find out that this, as big as the circle is, the industry is, there's a circle of guys you get connected with, and from there, one assignment leads to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So you go and do a good job, people, you know, keep passing your name around.
Yeah. And so what you do a lot of here, I understand, is in Louisville also, besides your great prolific playing on piano, keys, but you do a lot of production. A lot of production. So, you know, how do you strike that balance between performing and actual production, or is it the same?
So for me, it's kind of one and the same. You know, production, music, it's just different areas. All of it is a production. You know, there's a music side, there's a visual side of video, lighting, and then of course, you know, you have your audio, and then you have the actual production, you know, with the artist or whoever's performing. So I've been attracted to all of this, you know, and been in production roles since I was, you know, 16 years old. On some kind of level, I've been involved with production for a while. So it's a passion of mine. I like, you know, to see things, you know, from beginning to the end as it relates to music and audio, from arranging the music to performing the music, and then to what it sounds like on the final end of it. So, in terms of being an audio engineer at this point, I kind of was forced into it. You know, as a musician, you and a producer, you get exposed to all of these different things, but you go into situations that are just, you go somewhere and the sound is bad. They have bad equipment, or things are just, you know, configured wrongly. And what ends up happening is you have to be that person to fix it, and to make sure that, you know, that your portion of the production or the show or the concert, that it goes off correct. So me being in bad situations actually forced me into being an actual audio engineer. And so now, you know, it's just kind of comes along with the territory. Most situations I walk in, I end up involved with audio in some kind of way. So
that's beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
So you take a situation and it's not right, you're part of it, and so you improve it, you make it better. You step in and go beyond the call of duty, in a sense. And that's really a wonderful and great attribute. I really appreciate that. That's what you did for me. On the show that we played, you stepped and said, wait a minute, let me go and connect this the way it should be, and it turned out it would be a great show. I want to take a listen to A New Day Is Dawning, because that kind of intrigues me.
The truth is, we're tired. We're angry. We're tired because of Ahmaud Arbery. We're tired because of George Floyd. We're tired because of Breonna Taylor. We're still tired because of Eric Garner. We're still tired because of Tamir Rice. And it seems like things aren't changing. But I just believe as we march and as we protest, as we make things uncomfortable for privileged people, we want you to know that our hope has not diminished, that our faith has not left. We must first have justice. No justice, no peace.
A very, very strong message there. And that really coincides with your cover, your artistic work here. That particular story and the what I see here from your EP. So we're almost out of time, and what I do is play the name game. I give a name and you just reflect upon it and give me 5 words or less. and what that name might means to you. And I know that you've had many, many, many different experiences. Chick career.
A pioneer, innovator, technical, educator.
Here's another name.
Fluent.
Great. 5 words or less if you can.
Okay.
And that's perfect. A pioneer, Chick career. Mahalia Jackson.
Soul. Struggle. Historic. Gospel icon.
Oh, yes. Well, I want to thank you, Titus, for joining us here on SSC Live TV, where truth, justice, and power always prevail. My name is Mondre Moffitt. I want to really thank you for coming in and being a guest on the show.
Thanks for having me.